Hey, how's it going everyone? This is Lam here. In today's video, I finally get a chance to test out my setup at home here, but in this vlog, I want to talk about the new specs for the Canon 5R that just came out. This is a video that I've been wanting to talk about for a while, and I know some of you have been asking me to do a video on this. I'm sure you've already watched a couple of big channels going over what they think, so I'm just going to share with you my thoughts because you probably know all of the specs better than I do. The first thing that I want to say is thank you, Canon, for just putting the best technology that you can into a camera body, because this is something that we've been looking forward to for a while now. If you watched back on my previous Fuji Fridays, I think from 2018, I kind of went over the history on the Canon 5D Mark II, which is basically the camera that kind of started this revolution. It really made the indie filming industry what it is today. So with that camera, we really launched into a brand new category. It was an amazing camera, but really since then, they haven't really been innovating quite as quickly as other companies like Sony. But it's really great to see that they're just really putting in the best technology they can into this camera body. Hopefully they will continue this trend and really push the market into better and more innovative products. Now, as for their higher end market or their cine line of cameras, it's really up to them to continue to push forward, continue to innovate in order to command that high premium. And you force those divisions that R&D those high premium camera bodies to continue to innovate at a very fast pace. It just prevents mediocrity in your company, and it's just going to be better overall for the entire market. Now for this video, I'm just going to be concentrating on the video part because we know Canon does really well in photography. They've been doing well for decades now. So there's really nothing to say because we know it's going to be a fantastic photography camera. The eye-catching things that we're going to be talking about, of course, is going to be the 8K, the 4K, the 120 slow motion at 4K. Those are things that are really eye-popping in terms of specs that we just haven't seen before. And it'll be interesting to see how they actually are able to do this using the full width of the sensor or using the full sensor. So a couple of things that I do want to talk about in this department is that one thing that we know they're going to struggle in is heat, because this is something that all mirrorless camera bodies struggle with, which is once you start recording continuously, you're going to generate a lot of heat. It doesn't look like this is going to be a vented body. If you look at the Panasonic S1H, their camera body is vented so that it actually can draw out some of that heat, in which they need to be vented in order for them to record continuously. So heat is definitely something that I'm going to be looking at and seeing if it's going to have any problems, because if it's not a vented body, it's probably going to have record limits and it's probably going to be relatively short. The next thing that I would keep an eye on, and this is something that I've been concentrating more in 2020, is the audio interface in these camera bodies. And a lot of audio interfaces aren't really catching up with some of the specs that we're seeing in video. Going forward this year, I really think that the audio interface is something that camera bodies really need to improve upon, because audio is so important. If you think about it, it's an entire different industry. There are engineering fields just for audio, and a lot of people want to just talk about the preamp, but really, while that is a very important part about audio capture, it's not the only thing. We're really only scratching the surface for what a camera can do when it's actually capturing audio. So this is a field where I think a lot of cameras are lacking. So there's definitely a lot of improvements that I think a lot of camera bodies can really do there. So hopefully they don't skimp on the audio interface. We know from some of the other camera bodies that Canon has, they are capable of doing this, but it varies between camera body to camera body. So it's something to look forward to when people are testing that out. The last thing that I want to talk about is the dual pixel autofocus. So when dual pixel autofocus first came out, it was like one of the amazing standards that Canon set. But as more cameras came out with dual pixel autofocus, what I've noticed is that between camera bodies, and especially between the cinema line and the DSLR or mirrorless lines, there's kind of different grades to dual pixel autofocus. Now, it's not just one standard. So if you look at a C200, it has pretty amazing dual pixel autofocus. But if you look at some of the lower grade cameras in the Canon lineup, it does have dual pixel autofocus, but it doesn't work anywhere near as well as, say, a C200. But you know, we're talking about a $5,000 cinema camera body compared to maybe under $1,000 camera body. So obviously there can be differences, but it all falls under dual pixel autofocus. So at this point, there's kind of different grades of dual pixel autofocus, and it's something that people need to understand. And really, Canon needs to kind of clean that up because it's getting really hard to understand what dual pixel autofocus means to the consumer, because you can just get so many different grades of it. The last thing that I want to talk about before wrapping up this video is whether or not this is going to be a good value, because we've seen the specs, it looks terrific, but if it costs, say, $5,000, which is a price that it could probably command, it's really kind of a average value at that price point. Now, if it's going to be something like $3,000, that would be an amazing value, but at the same time, I doubt it's going to be something like that. So it'll be very interesting to see what the price point it is in order to actually get this type of camera body, because if you look at it right now, a Panasonic S1H is around $4,000. I think it's going to be hovering around there, maybe $4,500, maybe $5,000. So it's going to be quite an expensive piece of kit. Plus those lenses, while they are super sharp and super amazing quality, they're rather large and they're also expensive. Plus with this announcement, I'm sure some of the other camera manufacturers are either going to be aggressively pricing down their camera bodies, or they're going to be coming out with their own lines that is going to compete fairly well. So it's going to be a very interesting 2020, maybe 2021. Now, to wrap this all up, I do cover a lot of Fuji cameras. I think one interesting aspect with this announcement is what is Fujifilm's going to do with their GFX line, because obviously medium format right now is kind of knocking at the door of all-purpose use, but it's really not quite there yet, and it's still quite expensive. The GFX 100 definitely has set new standards in terms of what medium format can do, but that's a $10,000 camera. Can Fujifilm's drop down the price of a competitive GFX camera to really compete in that category? That's something that we're really going to have to keep an eye on for 2020 and 2021, because medium format is coming, but it's still got a ways to go before it can actually compete with full frames, especially in the pricing and the autofocus arenas. Those are two areas that we know that they really need to compete very aggressively on. Now, if you have a camera body like the X-T3, or you're thinking about upgrading to an X-T4, and this announcement has kind of enticed you to Canon, that's something that you're going to have to think long and hard about. But if your ultimate objective is to have maximum resolution or maximum image quality, then you really do want to step up to full frame or to medium format if you can afford it, because about 10 years ago, that was kind of my goal, is I wanted maximum resolution. I wanted maximum image quality. But at this point in my career, I really don't really care about that as much. It's really about size, weight, efficiency, and whether or not I can capture the moment and I can also enjoy the moment. So for me, a crop sensor camera is perfectly fine. Nowadays, what I really care about is whether or not I can get my setup set up very quickly, whether or not I can configure it on the fly very quickly, whether or not I can actually move around all of my gear very quickly, and whether or not my workflow can be very fast so that I can actually produce a lot of content. Those are the things that are now important to me. So as long as the workflow for the Fujifilm's cameras is really good and I can actually produce a lot of content, then I'm going to go ahead and continue to stick with the Fujifilm cameras, because I really do like the color grading. I really do like the dials. They allow me to work very quickly. I've kind of gotten used to the workflow of the Fujifilm's cameras, and their autofocus system works perfectly fine for my needs. So in terms of size, weight, and workflow, it's a really nice combination. So I really don't see a need to upgrade at this point. Please let me know what you think about this new camera body. Is it enticing you to go back to full frame again, or it's not something that you're interested? But those are my quick thoughts on the camera body. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think of this home setup and whether or not it's actually a good setup for those of you who have been watching this channel for a very long time. I would appreciate that. I hope you all are safe, and I'll see you in the next video.